Chill here with Sirius Taurus Moon, Sun in Taurus in the ninth house, applying to square Pluto. So, Sun squaring Pluto. Sun squaring Pluto as an aspect is what people call ego death, where Pluto tends to compost the planet that touches is an aspect with it, and then on that compost, something grows. Now, um, and this is where the challenge about Pluto is that Plutonian transits, particularly the hard aspects, can cause people to ideate traditions and occult practices that imitate the action of Pluto. Um, because Pluto takes now here's the drama with outer planets. Remember when I said, hey, if people have Neptune in the seventh house, before we diagnose them as codependent, we might just want to check that if they have Neptune in the seventh house. If they have it natally, this might be a lifelong pattern that around the Neptune square kind of begin to sort itself um, through immense loss and grief. But with outer planets transiting something, it can be a time in our life. Think about, I don't know, people go through the death of a loved one. Um, for example, I remember when I just moved to, I had eclipse on my son when I just moved to Arad after mid-COVID. Then we had a neighbor that had a dog. That dog was snoring, and then for a while, when things were not like horrific, um, then I was so enamored with that dog in the sense that they were so cute that I didn't mind them snoring. Not something I can sustain long term. And then the dog died, and the woman got pregnant. And she felt a little sad when the dog died because she felt she was not really paying attention to the dog, or the dog could have felt like a burden or something. And so this can be something that carries a weight. And when people go through such transits or such period in their lives, they might be more susceptible to the type of philosophies that make sense of that, but they have to be cautious that it's not a death cult. um, Now, Sun squaring Pluto from Taurus is the crisis of Sun in Taurus is about presence. You think about the presence of the Father. For example, Sun in Aries can be, who is the Father? Or I am the Father. The Sun in Taurus is the presence of the Father, the presence of a leader, the presence of our um, radiant, shiny, confident self. Um, the beauty of, um, how should I say, beauty queens. It can be because Venus is beauty. Um, and also the calm presence as beauty, or the calm presence as value in relations. התה הירוק? כן. לא, לא, לא. הנה הוא פה. יש עוד. And so, as a person who has Sun in Taurus natally, Sun and Venus, then for many I was considered this Isle of Peace. And when I was going through things in my life that weren't allowing me to be that Isle of Peace, then people were completely shaken. Even if these people were my teachers, or um, it's true that they may have done rituals. Now, here's the drama: if people did actually do occult rituals that were trying to embody my peace, then they would get me unpeaceful. So without me to, and then I would have to retrieve my own peace to be able to kind of like, um, how should I say that? It's like, okay, somebody did something. Wait a second, let me look at the chart. And I'm like, okay, I get what you did there. That backfires. But Taurus is also very peaceful, and um, it is value. Taurus valuing peace is profound, and this is where the depth of understanding is kind of like, okay, that person's peace was disturbed. Okay, I had to disturb that person's peace because where they were going were unnerving my peace. And Venus is about the sensuality. This is why this is why Venus is kind of like, oh, people think about Venus in Taurus and are like, oh, they're probably the people that can really find themselves, I don't know, supportive, whatnot. And when the actual Venus in Taurus, at least from my experience, is the embodiment and sense of self and peace is so important. Um, that is not stemming from, let's say, the outside, but the connection with, let's say, the herbs that grow naturally in the garden, or having a dwelling that has a garden, but also on an astral level, and so on and so forth. Now, Sun ingressing into Taurus, applying to square Pluto, is a crisis of the incarnation of Sun in Taurus. The peaceful presence is somehow composted, and there's an ego death about being able to be peaceful. Pluto in Aquarius with Saturn in Aries can denote that the necessity to stand in our power um, in front of a community that restricts the sovereign, and sort the wheat from the chaff, in the sense of when is the restriction of the individual is actually putting a boundary that allows the individual to grow to their more authentic self, and where is that restriction actually eroding the sense of self in the individual. And Saturn ruling over Pluto is when we practice astrology, psychology, and occult. Structures that have to do with identity cults or I don't know if personality cults, but definitely identity cults. And while an occultistic practice of being certain things can definitely be spiritual experience that is enormous, we also are in a conflict of rethinking the structure or rethinking the foundation of the structure so that it does allow um, the actual growth of the individual and the self assertion in a way that doesn't annihilate the self. Now, Sun in Taurus is the peaceful, calm presence. It can be of the father, or it can be, even if it's a woman that is um, visibly peaceful or valuing peace as a personality trait or leads in peaceful ways. And the square with Pluto is that certain structures or cultistic practices are somewhat composting that quality. Um, and this is where the evacuation of, because Pluto here can tend to do with elimination of um, toxic peace is needed for the personality to truly integrate and present itself or be peaceful. And so the friction is with an overall peaceful personality and an emergent identity cult that needs to refine its structures. Um, and Sun squares Pluto. Any Sun Pluto aspect, even the easy ones, can be very polarizing around a persona or a personality. Um, and Sun in Taurus here is a peaceful persona, but with the square to Pluto, it can also be the guerrilla gardener, or where peace becomes, or when peace becomes an act of rebellion and standing in one's power, but also asking where is keeping the peace standing in one's power, and where keeping the peace enables a standard, because Venus is also about standards, that everybody that speaks about these things will keep the peace. And Sun square Pluto from Taurus can literally be about an ego debt that has to do with losing one's peace, or the peaceful personality trait, or peaceful leadership, or even leadership towards peace, so that an actual authentic peace can be. Venus Beta Persei, moving from Taurus through Uranus to Gemini, grants that there are going to be final eurekas regarding those topics. We are deserving, and Venus is about deserving to shine as women in leadership roles. We are deserving a leadership that leads to authentic peace. Pluto shakes the Sun in Taurus comfort zone, um, because it won't allow Sun in Taurus to keep the peace with personas that, how should I say that violate sense of self. While Venus trine and applying to trine Pluto could assist us with standing in our power, or seeing the power of our values leading, rather than the power of our peaceful persona leading. This is also particularly a Venus home sign transit, meaning you can't Jupiter that away. Like I said, in issues of rape, particularly because the people that rape were raped, the healing from the patterns, the rapey patterns, necessitates not placing the responsibility on the raped. Because if we place the responsibility on the raped, we become rapey. In fact, when I was trying Abraham Hicks manifestation stuff, it compounded, um, and um, eventually it faced me with a situation where I was dissociated from a minor choice that I was making that was already violating. It was not rapey, but it was violating. It was something that I wouldn't do, um, let's say, if I was not trying to deal with Venusian stuff in Jupiterian ways. And if there was a discernment that was protecting my identity boundaries, which were violated by rapey patterns. We also want to think about the concept of this is terrible enough. What do I mean by that? Um, let's say I've been through horrible targeting for at least 2 decades. And somebody was sexually harassed. I don't think, oh, you were sexually harassed. You haven't been targeted for 2 decades. I immediately think, wait a second. Before and around that sexual harassment, were there any things like um, things that could have felt weird psychically? And by the way, the people that say, "Oh, this happened to you, this didn't happen to you," I seen people. One of the worst cases that I saw it, and however understandable it is, it was within a person that cohabits with the person that I suspect that is their handler. And then they keep talking about re-victimization, and I'm like, they're married, they have children, they talk about it. Where's the husband? Where's their community? Are they trafficked by the centers that they go to therapy and rehabilitation, and that's why they get to encourage to sell their art? Look how many Sun applying to square Pluto aspects are in this segment. Do people even know that they are deserving to have loving, happy, thriving life relations and artistic success and intimacy and orgasm that are not misplaced arousal and are not siphoned to something or filmed by people that they never consented to or money laundered? And so the Sun squaring Pluto can no longer keep the peace. Now, the opposite facet of that would be, where does the Sun in Taurus try to keep the peace in the face of this composting Pluto. Where does the Sun in Taurus insist to keep the peace? Where this Pluto is doing something that's, or Saturn's doing something that's composting the ability to have peace, and the Sun will have to stand in its power. Let's begin to track the days. Venus we're gonna have on Thursday, and then Sun. Venus is already Venus is with Sedna when Sun is 4 degrees, and she passes through Sedna, still conjoining Sedna upon the square Falcon. It's about human trafficking, art and human trafficking, fashion and human trafficking. Moon is going to be with Leo, applying to reach the orb of conjunction with Ketu out of sign. Chiron moves a degree forward. This is going to be a very major square. And Mercury in Aries. The methods of training artists or funding artists can no longer be by breaking their confidence. In fact, those are used to traffic the artists. And then the artist is the profit of the company, while they have to take on all the responsibility on the crimes that they are doing when they are raped and tortured. And Sedna's story here tells us that this can cause famine. It's kind of like people will have a palace made of gold but no food. That's what comes out by enslaving and trafficking people, and by claiming that rape is art. But people also have to, if how should I say that, if such groups that do that try to expand themselves all over the world, then eventually they bring their own persecution, because people can't even live with. But this is true. Think about a rapey village telling someone, okay, then leave us, then go somewhere else, and they don't have that somewhere else. They have to be able to be authentically who they are. If they're, let's say, an artist, they have to be able to have to live, to create, and to be who they are. And the road here looks like, yes, because Mercury is ruled by Mars, that is in its home sign. Um, so it's all in all looking that the Sun, the Venus pole is very bravely asserting themselves and sets a new standard. In the past, they thought that crazy people are great artists. No. In fact, when people began to um, tend to their mental health, they began to create more, and they began to be more profoundly creative and happier human beings. The dead cults that think that they create a human being, how should I say that? Pluto Aquarius was associated with the Mary Shelley Frankenstein stories. And what was the story of Frankenstein? Eventually, Frankenstein had its own being, its own sense of self. Now, Saturn Pluto in Aries is literally linked to groups of identities. It can be associated with what people call did, but it means that people are consciousnesses or identities are grouped together, and people have to stand in their power in the face of that, or break the pattern of grouping identities. We can talk about now. We can talk about collective consciousness. We can talk about egregores. We can talk about um, identity that, let's say, if people have intentional communities, but Saturn here is also um, confronting us to individuals standing in their power in the face of this communal structure that tries to group identities. And the degrouping of identities is done by abolishing rapey patterns.